There's a subtle current running beneath everyday interactions that almost never gets discussed. The sharper someone's perception of reality, the more unease they tend to generate in those around them. Not through effort, not through intention. Simply because clarity has a way of illuminating things others have worked hard to keep in shadow. Intelligence is usually framed as an advantage, a leg up, a prized asset that opens doors. But socially, it often operates as something else entirely. In many circles, high cognitive ability doesn't earn admiration, it earns quiet resistance. And that resistance rarely announces itself as hostility. It shows up as exclusion, as a cooling of tone, as fewer calls, fewer invites, a gradual fading from the center. It starts early. In classrooms, the student who pushes beyond surface answers gets labeled argumentative. In offices, the employee who spots structural inefficiencies gets called a pessimist. Among friends, the one who notices contradictions gets told they're overanalyzing. None of this is random. Why do groups instinctively resist the very clarity they claim to value? Human groups are, at their core, stability machines. They run on shared assumptions, a shared rhythm, a shared emotional baseline. When someone consistently thinks faster, recognizes patterns earlier, or questions unspoken rules, that rhythm gets disturbed. The disruption is subtle, but it lands. Most people don't consciously think, I dislike this person because they're intelligent. What they feel is harder to name. Exposure. Perceptive individuals see through facades. They notice the motives behind behaviors, the contradictions in stories, the insecurities wrapped in bravado. They register power dynamics that others pretend don't exist. And being seen at that level creates tension, not warmth, not appreciation, but tension. Because being truly understood can feel like losing control over how you're perceived. This is the central paradox. Intelligence expands awareness, yet expanded awareness often shrinks social ease. And in most environments, social ease is prized more than insight. There's another dimension to this dynamic, one even harder to spot. Intelligence disturbs hierarchies. Every social group has an invisible order. Every social group has an invisible order, not always about titles or money, but often about perceived competence, influence, and certainty. When someone consistently demonstrates sharper analysis or more accurate foresight, they subtly challenge that existing order. Even if they never compete, even if they never seek authority, their competence shifts the gravitational field. People instinctively compare. They measure themselves against those around them. Encountering someone who processes information faster triggers an internal recalculation. Am I as capable? Am I as sharp? Do I still hold my place? That recalculation is uncomfortable, and discomfort often turns into subtle distancing. How often is distance simply a defense against the mirror someone holds up? Instead of openly acknowledging the other person's ability, the group may socially diminish them. They'll call them intense, aloof, arrogant. These labels act as social levelers. They shrink the perceived threat. It's easier to say someone is arrogant than to admit you feel intellectually outmatched. It's easier to say someone is too much than to confront your own limitations. Perceptive individuals often feel this shift without fully understanding it. Conversations change. Inside jokes stop including them. Their input gets less enthusiasm. Not because they were wrong, but because they were right too often. In many environments, being consistently correct doesn't increase belonging, it reduces it. And belonging is the currency most people unconsciously prioritize above almost everything else. There's also the matter of pace. Intelligent people tend to move through ideas quickly. They anticipate conclusions before others have finished laying out the premise. They may finish sentences or interrupt, not from disrespect, but because they already see where the thought is going. To others, this feels destabilizing. Social interaction depends heavily on shared tempo. When one person operates at a noticeably different cognitive speed, conversational harmony fractures. The faster thinker may get bored, the slower may feel pressured. Neither intends harm, but friction accumulates. This tempo difference creates emotional distance. The perceptive individual may pull back to avoid frustration. The group may interpret that withdrawal as superiority. And here the misunderstanding deepens. Silence from a highly aware person is often read as judgment, even when it's just observation. If someone speaks less but registers more, others project onto that silence. They imagine criticism, evaluation, analysis. In reality, the person may simply be processing. but perception creates social reality. When someone believes they're being judged, they become defensive. Defensiveness reshapes relationships. This is why perceptive individuals often find themselves in a strange position. They're not attacking anyone, yet they're treated as if they are. Because awareness changes the atmosphere, and not everyone feels comfortable in a space where nothing goes unnoticed. Another reason intelligence breeds discomfort is resistance to group illusion. Every social environment maintains small, shared fictions. We all agree on this. Many of these agreements go unexamined. They're absorbed, not chosen. But independent thinkers question these structures, not aggressively, simply logically. When they ask why too many times, the question stops being intellectual and becomes political. Challenging assumptions gets interpreted as challenging authority. In workplaces, such thinkers may be labeled not a team player. In families, they're called difficult. In social circles, they drift to the periphery. Groups protect their internal stories, and intelligence threatens those stories by asking whether they're coherent. This creates a quiet social tax. The more someone values truth over comfort, the more often they must choose between authenticity and acceptance. Difference, especially cognitive difference, makes people uneasy. Not because it's hostile, but because it exposes fragility. There's an emotional component rarely discussed. Highly intelligent individuals struggle with shallow interaction, not from arrogance, but from a different stimulation threshold. They crave complexity, nuance, depth. Small talk drains them. When they disengage, others interpret it as disinterest or superiority, when it's usually just misalignment. Depth-seeking individuals ask questions that bypass surface comfort. What does it say about a culture when the pursuit of depth is treated as a violation? In social ecosystems where emotional comfort is prioritized over intellectual exploration, the deeper thinker becomes isolated. Isolation is gradual, fewer messages, fewer invitations. People naturally gravitate toward environments where they feel competent. If interacting with someone reminds you of your blind spots, you avoid them. Another factor is predictability. Intelligent people detect patterns before others do. They anticipate outcomes. This foresight creates social imbalance. When someone accurately predicts consequences, the relationship shifts from peer to something asymmetrical. People prefer relationships that feel balanced. If one individual consistently demonstrates sharper perception, others may feel observed. Not everyone wants to abandon pretense. There's also a paradox involving confidence. Intelligent individuals may choose restraint to preserve social cohesion. But when they do assert themselves, the shift can be dramatic. The unpredictability amplifies tension. Unpredictable identities generate cognitive effort in others. Effort translates into discomfort, distance. Over time, this creates a pattern. Admired privately, resisted socially. Belonging isn't granted to the most capable. It's granted to the most compatible. Intelligence doesn't automatically elevate status. It reshapes dynamics. Understanding this removes the illusion that dislike always signals personal failure. Sometimes it signals misalignment. Sometimes it signals threat. Perceptive is powerful, but power changes how people relate to you. If this exploration resonated, please hit like for Winds of Thought. It helps more people find ideas worth considering. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one.